Well, one, let me say, I don't like the term self-taught. Somehow that's demeaning to me. I would prefer the term independent scholars, meaning not connected with a particular academic institution. The first person that had a big influence on me was probably someone that most people have never heard of. His name is LeGrand Clegg. He was the city attorney for Compton, but he also, even before Ivan Van Sertima, was doing research on the African presence in ancient America. So LeGrand was a big influence on me. And LeGrand was a disciple of Chancellor Williams. Chancellor Williams I can't overestimate the importance of his work. Here's a man talking about African people in China, in India, in ancient Iraq, before anybody else. I mean, that was amazing to me. Here's a person talking about African people who not only had a history of greatness before enslavement, but who traveled all over the world and pioneered civilizations. So LeGrand Clegg was the first one. And then after that, I suppose I mentioned Chancellor Williams, but Ivan Van Sertima, the world's leading authority on the African presence in ancient America. We have people like John Henry Clark. And John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben, I guess I began to interact with him around the same time. Joseph Ben Jochannan is a pioneer Egyptologist. We call him Dr. Ben for short. Dr. Ben did three things of great significance. One is he's the first person to actually take people to Egypt. First prominent scholar to organize tours to the Nile Valley. Before Asher Kwesi, before me, before Tony Browder, before anybody else, Dr. Ben was doing that. Which is so important, to be able to see it for yourself. To see the pyramids for yourself. There's no experience like it. And then he also talked about the African roots of major world religions, which is still very controversial. The African roots of Islam, Christianity, Judaism, major Western religions. And then another thing that Dr. Ben did, he made it plain. You know, he went into the hood. He went into churches and anywhere basically that would have him, community centers, bookstores, cultural centers, and talked in a way that people could relate to. I'm not talking about academicians, but I'm talking about plain, ordinary, everyday black folk in search of a knowledge of self. So Dr. Ben is very powerful. So there's Dr. Ben, there's John Henry Clark, who historically concentrated more on West Africa, not the Nile Valley. And John Henry Clark was one of our great Pan-Africanists, believing in the global unity of African people. In fact, Dr. Clark will probably reprimand me today and say, Runoko, you use the word black too much. You should use the word African because Africa ties you to a land base. For me, I use black because it's a descriptive term for the people of Africa. There's Ivan Van Sertima, who I've already talked about, the author of They Came Before Columbus, the leading authority in the world on the African presence in America before slavery, before Columbus. I mentioned the work of LeGrand Clegg, Chancellor Williams. Those were the early scholars, icons. There's another brother from Chicago, or at least he lived in Chicago, and that's John G. Jackson. Now, John G. Jackson was the author of Man, God, and Civilization, Introduction to African Civilization, and a number of other works. He was a staunch atheist. He believed that Christianity was probably the worst thing that ever happened to us. And when I mentioned Chicago, I saw a reaction on your part. Maybe you thought I was going to talk about Dr. Jacob Carruthers, who I didn't know very well. I wish I had spent more time with him.
Absolutely not. And I'm